Next up, we're going to talk about the Midnight Express. And let's start with Jim Cornette, who I do not get along with, but is he the best manager ever, and what did he add to that act?
He's the second best ever. Bobby Heenan's first.
After Bobby, I agree, but what did Cornette add?
Number two, he's fearless. He's fearless. He loves his guys. He's a great talker. I mean, everybody's got a different story. I personally like Jim Cornette a lot. And I'll be honest with you, when I'm around a smart guy, I'm going to utilize him anytime. And that's why I said, you want to come be part of this ridiculous booking committee? I mean, there were some smart people involved. The problem is they wouldn't. In other words, like a guy, Jim Cornette doesn't drink. We have nothing in common socially, but he's a smart guy. And in the ring, he's fearless. I mean, no kidding. When he fell off the ramp, and Big Bubba was supposed to catch him. Oh my God! I mean, think about it. That's what they were 30 feet in the air, and Jim takes a bump off the.
Off the scaffold. The scaffold.
Off the scaffold, yeah. I watch him for the curtain, and Bubba's supposed to catch him. It almost killed them both. And Cornette he's hilarious, but he is by far there's no way around it. Bobby Heenan, Jim Cornette.
Yeah, I think he was a great manager. Past that, I'm going to need stitches because I'm biting my tongue. But he was a great fit for the Midnight, though, because it was a classic manager and actor pairing.
Exactly, yeah. He wore the coat and tie. And the big thing, too, about Jim, he ain't afraid of anybody. I mean, I can remember, he's just not afraid. And, those guys, I'm telling you, Mid-South, and even in the South period, when they came over to Crockett, those guys worked some pretty heated finishes. And it's not like it is now where no one gets to you. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. There was an element of danger when you worked in those days, for sure, especially in an act like that.
Absolutely. The example of the thing with Seth Rollins that we had fun with, that happened 3 times a week. Somebody hitting the ring. Or hitting, like, when you're standing outside with your back to the crowd, you know what I mean? And
right.
when you are that, because you have to be the guy to pull the rope or trip him or whatever, and your back is to it. I've seen Jim get jumped on 5 times.
Now, which was the better version of the Midnight Express, Bobby and Dennis or Bobby and Stan? And once again,
Bobby
as
and
we've spoken
Dennis.
about often, Bobby was the common denominator.
Bobby and Dennis.
Bobby and Dennis, tell me why.
Just more experience. They were together longer. I mean, I thought Stan filled in and did a good job, but he just wasn't. Dennis Condrey was a hell of a hand. And I'll tell you what, they knew each other so well that it was like me and Steamboat. Dennis and Bobby had been doing that for years, so they knew where they were in the ring all the time. You know what I mean? And when Stan came in, it's like a whole new learning process to find that level of confidence. You know what I mean? If you're working a long match. So I'm just giving it because Dennis was there longer.
Yeah, I think Stan had a better look, quite honestly. But I agree with everything you say about Dennis and his work. I thought it was a more fluid tag team with Dennis Condrey. Both versions were excellent because, again, Bobby was there for both versions.
Yeah. Hey, listen, you want to know how Stan Lane got into business?
Go ahead.
I'm at the Hilton Hotel with the lovely Elizabeth, Charlotte's mom, right? And I'm trying to be a big shot. So I'm trying to get her drunk at 9 o'clock in the morning, ordering Bloody Marys. We're at the beach. So I order 4 Bloody Marys. This is when I was still working it, right? Nothing, no, a ship has not sailed yet, but I'm in the process of, throwing the anchor out. So I'm big shot, and the kid comes to the door, and he goes, "Oh my God, are you Ric Flair?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Jesus." I said, "I'd like to talk to you, man, but I'm busy, but I'll be downstairs in a little bit." So he comes up to me and said, "I want to be a wrestler." So I started training him in Minneapolis, in Charlotte.
You trained Stan Lane?
Yes.
I did not know that.
500 free squats. 500 free squats. I trained him physically. I never got in the ring with him, but I got him ready to go. I can't remember where I got him booked at, but yep. Handsome Stan, man. Hey, Stan was big. He was, at that point in time in his life, he was big in the flight attendant world, as was I.
I always heard Stan dated Vanna White from Wheel of Fortune. Is that true?
No, that was me. 1978.
Is that true? Wow.
2000. Well, one date. You know, she didn't.
Well, a date's a date. That's more than I've had with Vanna White.
Yeah, at one date. 2001. Well, first of all, it wasn't a date. I didn't ask her out, but I met her.
Right, I got you.
Yeah, that's every time she spins the wheel, she must say, "Nature butt."
I bet you spotted her a vial or two. Now, the Midnight Express invented a lot of double high spots, like the Vegematic and Divorce Court double team high spots. Were they trendsetters in that regard? They were one of the first that I remember to kind of use those consistently.
Yes, I would say so. Yeah, it certainly wasn't Ole and Gene, who were a great tag team, but totally different styles. I mean, you know, I went from Nick and Ray to Ole and Gene, the ground and pound, the grab the arm, rise the arm, from watching Nick and Ray go upside down and all that. And I said to myself, well, I'm honored that they're going to let me be their cousin and get that rub, but that's not how I work. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
After seeing Ray Stevens bounce around, that's when I got in my mind, that's what I want to be.
What was the best feud for the Midnight Express? We talked about the Rock and Roll earlier, but also the Fantastics. The Fantastics were a hell of a team, and they had great matches with them as well.
Yeah, but the best feud was Rock and Roll and Midnight.
What made it so great?
Chemistry and a guy named Jim Cornette who could really generate heat. And you know what? They wrestled each other as many times as Steamboat and I did. They knew each other. Bingo. Never missed a beat. Never.
Well, let me add to that.
They were the original.
Well, let me add to that, Nate. I saw you and Steamboat wrestle live probably a dozen times. Mm-hmm. And you never had a bad match. Never. Not once. I think the same could be said about Rock and Roll and Midnight. They never had a bad match.
I would agree with you very much.
Did you and Steamboat ever have a bad match?
No.
And you had literally like over 100, correct? Well over 100.
Oh, God. Probably 1,500.
You wrestled Steamboat 1,500 times.
Well, from 1976 until when was the last time I wrestled him? I mean, we were married. You got to remember, in one calendar year, I probably wrestled Steamboat, at least 1,000 times, at least.
Yeah, because you would do months and months together.
We were married. We only had that brief separation when he fell out with Dusty and he went to New York. But then he came back. But from 76 till, God, 80? Oh, God, 89, my God, easily. I'm going back to 1,500 times.
Now, we've been talking about the Rock and Roll.
I could wrestle him blindfolded and tell you I could have a good match.
Oh, I'm sure.
If somebody walked me to the middle of the ring, I could wrestle him blindfolded. I could just. I had a sixth sense with him.
Now, we've been talking about the Rock and Roll and the Midnight. Did all those type tag teams spring from the fabulous ones, who were Stan Lane and the aforementioned Steve Keirn? They were the first of that genre, I think. They were before those guys.
Yeah, but entirely different. Entirely different.
Tell me how.
Just better. I mean, more energy, more charismatic.
Now, do you remember when Cornette's Midnight Express feuded with Paul Heyman's Midnight Express, and Cornette bladed and the blood was so bad the TBS went nuts, no more blood, and it was more juice than I've ever seen?
You know, I do remember that, yeah. Well, like I said, Jimmy's not afraid to do anything.
That was the first time he bladed.
And he doesn't do it half-ass.
He certainly didn't do it then. Now, the Midnight Express also never had a run in WWE. Again, that's hard to believe.
I know. It's hard to believe they're not in the Hall of Fame. It's funny, they had Cornette induct Rick and Robert, which was fabulous. But I just figured that just was, they were saying, oh man, we need to recognize these people in the industry. The Midnight's still not there. And Bobby Eaton's passed, so, which is a terrible, terrible loss. What a great guy.
Yeah, now that you say that off the top of my head, yeah, it would kind of ring hollow with Bobby not being around to enjoy it, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Why is Wahoo McDaniels not in the Hall of Fame?
Well, it's their Hall of Fame. I mean, I agree with you totally, but there's a limo driver in the Hall of Fame.
Who's that?
Vince's, I think Vince Sr.'s limo driver's in the WWE Hall of Fame.
Well, but I can understand that because he probably learned more about the business riding around with Vince Sr. than half the guys knowing it today.
Yeah, maybe. He's a limo driver. Limo driver's in there and Bobby Eaton isn't.
Yeah. Well, I can't.
Well, no, that's because it's their Hall of Fame, Nate.
I could give you some examples of some really other things, but I'm just like, we're not shooting today. Ask me when I've had a couple drinks.
Not about that anyway. We'll shoot in St. Louis.
Ask me in St. Louis.